my beautiful people. So today I wanted to talk about my top 5 eyeshadow palettes of this year, 2016. And these are palettes that are just some of my favorites that came out this year. They're consistent in pigmentation, they're versatile, they're blendable and buttery shades, they're consistent in quality and texture of the eyeshadows, and they're overall just great and some of my favorite eyeshadow palettes out there this year. So let's get started. I'm gonna start with number 5 and then kind of work my way up to my top favorites. So number 5, I would have to say this year I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised with this palette, the Tarteist Pro. It came out not too long ago, a few months ago. I've been playing around with it for quite some time. These are the shades that come in this palette, and this is just overall a very good quality put together palette. So you have, warmer colors up top, you have mauve berry wine colors in the middle, and then you have your basic browns for an everyday look. So this is a very versatile palette, and I feel like for me, I love this palette because it has a ton of mattes, it has 3 shimmers and 1 dual chrome, and it just gives you such a good variety of looks and colors, and I feel like it's a great palette in consistency and the pigmentation of the colors, and just overall some of my favorites of this year for sure. Now, moving on, I'm going to also try to include some dupes that I have for the higher end palettes, just so you guys can know that there's really good quality in like drugstore eyeshadows as well. Moving on to number 2, I wasn't going to mention this one, but I am just because it relaunched this year, and it's this Sweet Peach Too Faced palette, and I love these shades. It has such a great selection of color. It has more of like warmer peachy tones. It has a little bit of violet tones. It also has a lot of neutral tones. So if you're, maybe working in a professional environment, or you go to school and you like more of like toned down neutrals, this is a great palette, because even though there are pops of color like the rusty brown, orange right here, the violets, the green, you still can have very like day-to-day look, plus a couple of pops of color. And the pigmentation on these is amazing. They're really great. They're very buttery. There's some shimmers, some mattes. There's great transition colors. And overall, this palette is a great quality palette. And one of the dupes that I found for this palette from the drugstore is this Revolution London palette. I got this at Ulta, and these are extremely affordable. They're like under $10 eyeshadow palettes, and this is the professional eyeshadow palette, neutrals and neutrals. So it has the same kind of consistency and color, so it's very good in quality pigmentation wise. The colors really do show up, and it has that similar, peachy, wine, burgundy kind of neutral type of color selection. So I feel like this is a great dupe for the Sweet Peach palette, and the colors are very pretty, very shimmery, very wearable for like an everyday look with a little bit of warmth and kind of peachiness in it. So this is, I feel like, a very good quality dupe for the Sweet Peach palette. Now, moving on, I'm going to be talking about one of the greatest palettes. It's by Kat Von D, the Metal Matte. It's this huge metal matte palette that came out this year. I love this not just because, the packaging is super creative, because it has like the two-way name of the palette, but it also has a ton of amazing shadows. So it has all your mattes on the bottom, all the shimmers on the top. Kat Von D's shimmer eyeshadows and mattes are some of my absolute favorites. They're buttery and creamy without a lot of fallout. They blend like a dream. And this palette, even though it is kind of like big in comparison, to any other palette, it is just a very versatile and a very kind of really well collaborated palette. So it has this side right here, it has your kind of more neutrals everyday look. shadows, and then right here it still gives you those essential like super awesome pops of color with the blue, with the greens, with the shimmers. This one right here, Nebula, is amazing on the lid for like a smoky dark blue eye. You have your neutrals, browns, great transition colors right here with bone, and it has a little bit of a burgundy. This gold is just phenomenal paired with this burgundy or any other shade. And this palette, I feel like, is everything you will need. And if I were to like invest in one palette that kind of gave me a little bit of everything with great quality and great texture and super versatile, it'd be this palette right here. And you can't really go wrong with this because I feel like this will suit so many people because it is so, you know, a little bit of everything, and it kind of almost like tries to you know, convinces you to get out of your comfort zone and play around with those darker, a little bit on the crazier side colors. So this is definitely one of my favorites this year, and I've gotten a lot of use for it. And it's just really nice. And her eyeshadows, the shimmery ones, they go for about like $20 each. And with the selection of the shimmers that you have up top right here, and this whole palette was like $60, I believe. It's just a great value for your money. Dupe, a very similar dupe that I found from the drugstore, is this NYX Brighter Days palette that came out for the holidays. These are very similar types of color family shades. So you have a little bit of green, you have a little bit of the dark blue, the burgundy, also a little bit of like the neutral browns. And I feel like this is one of the palettes from the drugstore that I highly recommend if you're trying out, you know, to play around with a little bit of pop of color and you just don't know, you know, which palettes are pigmented enough. Let me tell you, this palette is extremely pigmented. For the price, this palette came with like a matte lipstick and a liner, and it was in the $20 range. So it's extremely affordable and extreme good quality and pigmentation of the eyeshadows. And I feel like this is a great dupe for the Kat Von D, even though it's not exactly the same, and it's not exactly like, it doesn't have exactly the same shades in the palette. It still gives you that like a little bit of like playfulness, you know, to it. So great dupe from the drugstore for the Kat Von D Metal Mattes. Now my number 2 palette, which honestly I've gotten so much use out of it, and I love like rose gold shades and mauve types of shades for like an everyday look, is this LORAC Unzipped in the rose gold. Oh, there's the palette. It comes with the mirror, and this palette, even though the shades might seem like they're really similar, there's some mattes, some shimmers. I feel like this is such a great palette. I've gotten so much use out of it, and it's a great everyday palette. So it has like the more mauve types of shades. This right here, Unbelievable, is an extremely awesome shimmery shade just all over the lid. I've applied this and I've done like smoky looks with this. I've done like neutral, really light looks with this, and it's really easy to blend these colors out. It's a great palette. I feel like it's one of my favorites this year for an everyday type of neutral palette. It's just unbelievable shades. And they also came out with the gold version of this, which is also a great, you know, quality of a palette, but I feel like I'm more of like a mauve person, berries, wines, purples, and I feel like this is just a great selection. And I've been looking for a lot of dupes, and there's a lot of like rose gold toned palettes in the drugstore, from CoverGirl to Maybelline has come out with some. I really love this Milani palette, and this isn't a gold because I couldn't find my burgundy like mauve palette. I don't know where it went, but this one is just great. It has the same amount of like shimmer. It has really great transition colors, and the quality of these shadows is really unbelievable for the drugstore. And like I said, this is the gold one, so I feel like it would match more with the LORAC Unzipped Gold. But they have a burgundy, they have a blue, they have a smoky one, and this palette is absolutely great in quality as like a almost dupe for LORAC's eyeshadows and the unzipped palettes. I feel like There's great, all over the eyelid shimmers. There's like there's a little bit of the highlight shades, and there's like a really nice neutral look that you can get with this. So definitely would recommend as one of the dupes for the LORAC Unzipped palettes. Now, my number one, and I actually couldn't decide because there's two main brands that come out with some of my favorite eyeshadows. So for number one, I actually have it split into two of my favorite eyeshadows. Now, the first ones I'm going to talk about are the Makeup Geek foiled eyeshadows. These are eyeshadows that I raved about for quite some time. Makeup Geek does amazing eyeshadows, especially the foiled ones. They have mattes, they have shimmers, they have dual chrome, but these foiled eyeshadows are unbelievable. They are like nothing else. And the great thing about these is that you get a Z palette, and these are magnetic so they don't fall out, and you get to custom make your own palette. So you can pick whatever shades you'd like, whatever shades suit you most, and kind of create your own palette. And you can mix match mattes and shimmers. I have mainly just their foiled eyeshadows because I feel like the pigmentation on these is out of the world. Like, it is just insane how pigmented and shimmery these are. And I usually incorporate like a little bit of shimmer in every single look I do, just because I feel like it gives the eye a little bit of like that pop, that kind of shimmer, that brightening effect. And these are absolutely some of my favorites. I have, I started another one actually from Makeup Geek that I have more of like green and purple shades. It's not all the way filled, but these are just some of my absolute favorites. And the other one that is tied on number one with the Makeup Geek is the Natasha Denona Star Palette. And I feel like this palette has been raved about, especially on YouTube by a lot of YouTubers, and this palette is great for an everyday kind of look. And the reason why I mention it as tied with my Makeup Geek, because the Makeup Geek eyeshadows, in my opinion, are just as pigmented, as buttery, as shimmery, but they are a little bit more affordable, especially because of the fact that you can make your own palette and you can kind of build it. So you don't have to spend, $100 at once. You can just buy the Z palette and just add one shadow at a time. Whereas this, you kind of do have to splurge on the whole palette at once. And even though it is like, extremely expensive, these are extremely some of the best pigmented, buttery, creamy, good quality, good texture eyeshadows. And Natasha Denona actually has a lot of different smaller palettes as well. And she's a makeup artist, and she specializes in different textures. So she has dual chrome also. She has amazing crystal and shimmery shadows. And this is a palette where I feel like you can use for the daily, and you still have the couple pops of colors. So you have like the burgundy, the reds, you have like this peachy warm tone, but you also have your browns, that you can use for like workspace and school environment. And then you have, the party colors, which are like these crystal shades that are absolutely amazing. And so I definitely have not been disappointed with this palette, even though this right here shade in the middle is supposed to be dual chrome, but I don't think it is. I did a whole review on this palette a couple weeks ago, and this is my tied number one, place for the best eyeshadow this year with the Makeup Geek foiled eyeshadows. I feel like even though they are a little bit more expensive, it does, you do get your money's worth because they are so pigmented and effortless in blending and kind of don't make you do a lot of work for, the pigmentation and the colors you actually want to achieve. And for those, the only dupe I was able to find and even come close to are actually the Colorpop eyeshadows. And these are extremely affordable because they're $5 each. So they're almost like 1/4 of the price of the palettes of number one and of my number one spot in this year's. And they have a lot of great variety. They have shimmers, they have mattes, they have glittery shadows. And these are very unique because the pigmentation is amazing, even though they are super affordable, and they actually have this really unique texture of like a bouncy very creamy but dry texture at the same time. And I've been raving about Colourpop, the brand in general, all this year, and I feel like these are some of the greatest dupes for any palette, honestly. I feel like they have such a great selection of color, and they're so unique in texture and diversity that I feel like Colourpop eyeshadows are a dupe for a lot of great eyeshadow palettes and some of the higher end, you know, palettes and shades that you can accomplish. So that's it, you guys. Those are my top 5 eyeshadow palettes and some dupes that I have found for this year, for 2016. And hopefully you guys enjoyed my preferences. And thank you guys so much for watching. You can subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of reviews and swatching of makeup and beauty products in general. You can also follow me on Instagram, superlady246. And thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate all your guys' support, and have a great one. Bye! Mwah.